Greetings, YouTube. 大家好. I'm Tony Chang, also known as Tony Krita on DeviantArt. After about a month of browsing and searching, I finally come across Ajani Goldmane from Magic the Gathering The Legacy Collection by Funko and Gentle Giant Studios. Just like last time, I'm very happy that I bought Ajani here for a little over $5 at a discount store in my area. Anyway, I'll give him a turn around so that you can all get a better look. Ajani's story is one that many social outcasts can relate to. For the sake of this video, I'll try to keep it short. Ajani was unlucky enough to be born with white fur, which made most members in his tribe believe that he was a bad omen. As such, Ajani lived most of his young life in ridicule. Ajani had an older brother, who was chieftain at the time. He was one of the few who loved and respected Ajani unconditionally. Ajani did his best, and then some, to repay his brother by being one of the best hunters, fighters, and healers in his tribe. Unfortunately, most of his tribe continued to spit on him, despite that he had his brother's favor. Ajani's life took an even worse turn when he witnessed his brother's murder at the hands of an unseen force. Being the loyal little bro, Ajani vowed to avenge his brother's death. He then traveled to many different worlds during his quest for revenge, where he met and befriended fellow warriors from other races. He even crossed paths with an evil dragon at one point, who more or less orchestrated his brother's death. They fought each other to a standstill. After Ajani came to terms with his brother's demise, he chose to help one of his warrior friends with her own predicaments, since she helped him with his own personal demons. Unfortunately, after many more battles, Ajani had to face tragedy once again. His own friend eventually got killed by a jealous god. Now Ajani is on another quest for revenge, but this time he's taking a moderate approach. He now tries to convince the populace to turn against the god who betrayed his friend. Before we look at Ajani Goldmane's figure, I'd like us to see the weapons that he comes with right out of the box. First is his tiny sword, which is sheathed to his left. See this dark gray blade right here with the thin black handle? Very well sculpted, despite being small, and you can almost see a battle cat that is about to pounce. That cat can be seen on both sides of the blade. The blade should fit into Ajani's right hand, but because of his fingers being so closed that his sword just can't fit in there. As such, the sword can only go back into his sheath. In case that you haven't noticed, Ajani Goldmane's axe is larger than Garrick Wildspeaker's axe, probably because of the second axe head, but even without it, Ajani's axe would still be a good-looking little number. Both axe heads are identical, with the exception of different paint. Both axe heads seem to have a cat head sculpted into each of them. Some more backstory. Apparently, Ajani's axe used to have only one head, but after the death of his Hingdai, Ajani grafted his brother's axe head onto his own axe. If that isn't paying tribute to your family, I don't know what is. Ajani Goldmane's axe can fit into his hand, like so. Takes a bit of doing, but it can be done. I'm doing this carefully because I don't want to risk getting pinched or pricked by Ajani's sharp claws. As promised, here's a close-up of Ajani Goldmane's figure. He is one very, very massive cat. Like all other figures in this Legacy Collection line, Ajani is very well detailed and well sculpted. Once again, he comes with a level of detail that, well, you know the rest. There ain't no denying that Ajani's clothing and gear help define the figure. Even from behind, Ajani impresses us. Ajani's height can vary depending on how you position his legs and hind legs. Because of how I position them, Ajani stands at about 8 inches tall, making him taller than Garrick Wildspeaker himself. Quite fitting for a lion warrior, in my opinion. If Ajani's Hingdai was lucky enough to have an action figure that was made in his likeness, I can only imagine how tall that toy would have been. Before we move on, I must tell you that Ajani's cloak is not detachable right out of the box. The reason why I can do it here? Well, I did a little cutting and trimming off screen after I watched someone else do the same with his Ajani figure. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. From behind, you can see where I did some cutting and trimming. Obviously, my handiwork wasn't as clean. Before I forget, apparently Ajani's cloak was originally white. It used to belong to his fallen female warrior friend. But here, his cloak is obviously painted blue. I don't know how Funko and Gentle Giant Studios missed that detail. I'd better give a heads up about Ajani's head. No pun intended. If you manage to buy Ajani's figure, you'll notice that his head will look a little unfinished. His left eye will only be painted brown. His lips, they won't even be painted at all. I took care of that problem on my own with my figure, of course. I used a rolling ball pen to fill in his left eye. As for his lips, I used a micro brush to paint his lips black. So if you want Ajani to look as good as possible, you'll have to do a little work yourself once you unbox him. There's no putting this off, so let's go over Ajani's articulation. His head can barely move thanks to the gear that he has on him. Shoulders can swivel up and down, forward and back. You can't get a full 360 because of his shoulder pads, of course. There's a bicep swivel. Biceps can do a full 360 if that matters to you. Elbows on a ratchet joint, they can be a little tough to manage sometimes, but if you use a little bit of strength, but not too much strength, you can get them to move. Wrist tilt and swivel. I have to be careful here because his claws are sharp. I don't want to risk poking myself. In fact, I snagged my gloves a few times just after touching his claws. There's an ab crunch, but he can't arch his back very well because these brown straps block that movement. Torso rotation, just barely. Leg articulation. Ball joint in the hips. Thigh swivel. Knee ratcheting. Very tough ones sometimes. Hind legs are a different story. I don't know if they're on a swivel or a ratchet, because they can be a little loose at times. This area, this leg bracelet that he's wearing is also sharp. Paw articulation. His paw can swivel. Left paw does have an ankle tilt, but his right one does not, or at least it doesn't tilt very well. I don't know why. And his tail just flops around. You can't flex it or bend it in any way that you choose. It usually just sits there. I really shouldn't pay it any mind. Size comparisons. Here's Ajani standing alongside his fellow wavemates Liliana Vess and Garrick Wildspeaker. Like I said, straightening Ajani's legs makes him the tallest figure in the lineup. I like seeing the good guy be taller for once. Before I move on, I'd like to thank YouTube user SeibenLore for his videos about Magic the Gathering. In fact, I learned about Ajani's backstory from one of his videos. I'll leave a few links in the description down below. Should I recommend Ajani Goldmane's figure? Yes, definitely! You may or may not be a Magic the Gathering fan, but you gotta love having a majestic and mighty son of a beast in your collection. If you can, find him at whatever store or website that you can think of. I'm just glad that I found him for a little over $5. This has been my review of Ajani Goldmane from Magic the Gathering The Legacy Collection by Funko and Gentle Giant Studios. I'm Tony, also known as Tony Creator on DeviantArt. Feel free to comment and all that. Be sure to visit my DeviantArt page. As usual, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Thanks again for watching. Joy Gin!